So I'm just going to make it a little larger so you can see it. So this is one I made for one of my AP classes when I was teaching the face-to-face classroom, and it's linked in the course resource newsletter for Oceanography as a Science, and also in the first Science Inquiry Lab for apes. So depending on your course. So you can see that we've got a title here, and then we've got this was a group project that the kids were working on. We don't really have group projects in at Georgia Virtual School, but this one was a group project. So I basically put all three people's names here. This was just my family initials, and then I bolded the one that was me. So if you're writing a lab report for another class or something like that, that's kind of how you would do that. The abstract you don't need to have for virtual school. So let me see if it will let me make a notation. They've completely like redone Jigsaw, so it's like totally different now. Okay, let me do a laser pointer at least. So right here, you would not write this abstract. You would start at the introduction. And so basically, in the introduction, you're going to use some background information that you've found somewhere. So you can see here that I've cited that, and we kind of talked about that in the video. And you're kind of basically using the background information to kind of explain why you even bothered making the experiment. Because, my teacher told me to, and I have to do it for a grade, isn't really what you want to put in that introduction. Now these kids were doing statistics for this, so that's why they have that. You would say, my hypothesis is if I do this, then this will happen, or if whatever, then this will happen. And so you'll kind of write it like that. Then in your materials and methods section, if you want, you could do like a bullet point of materials and methods, but you don't have to. You could just kind of list them however way you want. And then this one, you can see that we talked about how much we were adding to each treatment plot. You can see we had a control here. And then we talked about how much we were watering each plot, so that would be another control variable. And then we talked about, you can see they're talking about here how often they're taking their data. So all of that is important. But you don't want to tell your reader about your results. You're just kind of telling them how you set it up. You don't want to tell them anything about your data yet. So a lot of times you can even write the materials and methods and the introduction before you even start your experiment, or while you're waiting for your experiment to, if it's multiple days or something, you can write the introduction, materials, and methods before you even finish your experiment, because you don't need to know the quote answer in order to write those sections. And then you'll write your independent variable, your dependent, whatever your control was. And then if you're going to do any statistics, which we really won't, then you'd say, we're going to use these statistics. Then you want to include your data. So you could say, in table 1, I wrote down whatever that you're measuring. In this one, I think it was fertilizer, so how much the plants grew. And you'd have like a data table, and then you'd label your data table. So, and then let's go to the next page. Up. Okay. In the analysis section, so the analysis section basically just has the word there, and then the next one. This is where you'll put your graph. So, all the things that we talked about in the video that you need for your graph, like a label with units on your X and Y axis, and a title and a best fit line, all that stuff you'll want to put in that graph, and then you can kind of explain your graph. You could say, this treatment didn't really do much, it didn't grow much, but this treatment grew a whole bunch. Whatever you want to put there. Again, you're not really interpreting your data, you're just kind of like pointing out the important parts of your data. Now, in your conclusion, that's kind of where you're kind of gonna, that's where you're giving away your ending. So you'll talk about did you think it, like in this one, they're talking about fertilizers. So they said, in our experiment, the fertilizer did not make enough of a difference to warrant the cost of the fertilizer because they were only, a little bit different. If you had a hypothesis, you can say that your hypothesis was supported or not. And it doesn't matter. So like, if your hypothesis was quote wrong, that's okay. You don't have to like go back and fix your hypothesis, so it's right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be right. You just say your hypothesis is not supported. Then you want to talk about any errors in your experiment or what you would like to do in the future. So you could say some errors might be that, if you wanted to keep all your plants in the same amount of sun, but you put them all across a windowsill and one part of the windowsill got shaded in the afternoon while the others didn't, that could be a source of error. You could say what you're going to do in the future. So if that was a source of your error, right, that some of them got shaded, then you could say in the future, I'm going to put all my plants somewhere where, some of them aren't getting shaded more than others in the afternoon or something like that. And then, and you could talk about, what you might change about the experiment, what you want to add to it later, if you were going to redo it, that kind of thing. A lot of times the reason they discuss that, what they're doing in the future for like real scientists, what they're doing is they're basically kind of justifying the fact that they may want to ask for a grant or they may want to ask for some money later to continue their research. So they're using that, what would I do in the future, to kind of justify how they could adjust or change their experiment to get some different data or better data. So then when they go, to ask for more funding, they've got that there. And then you'll list your references, whatever references you used, you'll list at the end. And like I said, you can go to that Purdue OWL and they have like literally any type of reference you would ever want to cite. They have a way to cite that. And so that's kind of how your lab report will look. And again, you'll be able to see this document in that course resource newsletter. And I believe I even uploaded it to the user link section of the course, so you can look for it there. So that's what I had for you today. Did you have any questions for me, or is there anything that I can help you with, while we're here? If so, I'd love to answer your questions. If not, you're free to go.